ReefBum is sponsored by Champion Lighting and Supply, Polo Reef, and Fauna Marin.
Hey everybody, and welcome back to another video. So a little while ago I did a video on some things that I would never do again in terms of methods or use again in terms of equipment, but in this video I want to go over some things that I've made in terms of permanent changes to the way I keep reef tanks. So with that, I've got my list right here again, and let's go through it. All right, so I've been keeping reef tanks for about 30 years, and let's say that this list that I have come up with is a list of things that I've changed up in the past 10 years, so versus the first 20 years of my reef keeping journey. And one thing that I've definitely been doing more so in the last 10 years or so is really manage detritus in my reef tanks. So I've been very diligent about siphoning it out, every week in my sumps. So taking a power head and blowing off the rocks every other day, letting the mechanical filtration capture any of the detritus that blows off the rocks. I've also got some bare bottom tanks, and that's another thing I want to talk about, bare bottom. But it makes it easier to manage the detritus in the display tanks when you have a bare bottom tank. So I do a lot of siphoning of the detritus in the display tanks, and again, that's every other day. So the other thing is I'm changing out my, or cleaning my filter socks twice a week versus doing it just once a week, just to make sure there's no accumulation of dead organic material in those filter socks that potentially could elevate nutrients. Another thing that I just talked about with detritus is bare bottom tanks. I'd always kept sand in my reef tanks over the years, but I made the switch to bare bottom tanks, and a lot of that, again, it's related to the detritus. Managing that accumulation in sand beds can be a little tricky. If you have the right cleanup crew, not so much so. I know folks also do a lot of siphoning of their sand beds to manage the detritus accumulation. But I like to keep SPS dominant reef tanks, and with that you need a lot of flow. So I've just found it easier, I think, without sand, to have the bare bottom tanks with an SPS dominant tank. Of course, you could use coarser sand in a tank with SPS with a lot of flow to kind of get around that issue of the sand blowing around due to the high circulation. Bacteria dosing is another thing that I've been doing the last few years, and it's been more so, not to feed the corals. I think there is evidence out there that corals do consume certain types of bacteria, and there's food benefits for the corals consuming the bacteria. But I'm more so using bacteria dosing to manage nutrients. So I no longer use macroalgae, I don't use GFO, and I'm leaning on my protein skimmer water changes to help manage nutrients. But I'm also using bacteria dosing in that sense, because that will help to lower nitrates and phosphates as well. Lighting. I've been a hard and true big fan of metal halide lighting for the majority of my reef keeping career. Metal halides plus T5s. I love the 400 watt 20K iridium bulbs, but they do produce heat. They can get a little costly in terms of bulb replacement, but I think there's a debate, and I'm not really convinced that you do save a lot of money using LEDs in terms of electricity costs. You can comment in the comment section below, but I think there's good arguments back and forth. So I'm not convinced that there's a big cost savings in using LEDs versus halides, but the heat is an issue, especially with me in the summertime here in my basement. So anyway, a few years ago, I started using the GHL Mitras, the LED lights, and just fell in love with them. I've probably seen some of my best results ever using the LEDs versus the halides. You can't go wrong with halides, but man, I am totally on the LED bandwagon. I'm probably one of the last people to be on that LED bandwagon. So I've, both of my display tanks now are lit by the GHL Mitras, as well as one of my frag tanks. I've still got 2 frag tanks that are lit by metal halides, the 400 watt 20K iridium. So I still have my my foot in the door with the with those legacy types of lights. But I love them. I mean, the corals in those tanks with the halides are doing great. Another thing I've been focusing more on in the latter part of my reef keeping journey, career, whatever you want to call it, is elevated pH. Kalkwasser dosing. I've been dosing kalkwasser for a long time, but I've been using a Kalk stirrer, reactor, whatever you want to call it. Now I'm using the Chris Meckley method in terms of using a drum for kalkwasser dosing. There's no stirring that goes on. There's so nothing to mix up the kalkwasser every day. It's basically a drum. I have 2 30-gallon drums, 1 drum for each system. I put the kalkwasser in the bottom of the drum, fill it up with RODI water. That's how it gets mixed up. And then I've got a peristaltic dosing pump that draws from those drums to dose the amount of kalkwasser that I need. And I'm trying to essentially, on a reverse light cycle, replace what I evaporate in a day overnight. So I've got another video on that. If you want more details, I could put a link in the video description below. So elevated pH is certainly something that I've been focusing more on. It's really helped a lot in terms of the growth rates of my corals. I also got an air exchange unit, which has certainly increased the pH of my systems. I think it's elevated the pH by 0.2 pH points, which is pretty significant. So again, that's a big part of it. But elevated pH, I've been focusing on getting my pH into the 8.2 to 8.4 range. Sometimes it hits 8.5, but awesome results with the elevated pH. And the other thing I'm doing is also dripping the effluent from my calcium reactors into the skimmer pump to help degas the CO2 that is coming out of the calcium reactors. So again, that's another thing that has helped to elevate pH. UV sterilizers. The last few years I've been kind of on and off in terms of using a UV sterilizer, but now I'm pretty much all in. I know that it impacts the microbiome. There's certainly a different profile of a reef tank with a UV sterilizer versus one that does not have a UV sterilizer, but I haven't seen that as an issue with my tanks in terms of my corals. Everything has been, looks great. The main reasons why I'm using UV is like if there's any water, any pathogens in the water column, fish pathogens, coral pathogens, if the UV can help manage some of that. I'm not expecting it to totally be a solution in that regard, but if it could help manage some stuff like that. Dinoflagellates, I've had dinoflagellates before, so if they're the free-floating variety, I think I'd like to have the UV going on 24/7 in case something happens that could bring on dinos. I've recently had some issues with my nutrients bottoming out. Been running the UV sterilizers all the time, did not get the dinos, knock on wood. So who knows, maybe that UV sterilizer came in handy for that purpose. But I like running them, and my corals look great, so I'm gonna keep doing it. Another thing that I have changed up that I had not done early in my reef keeping career is trace element dosing. I use the Captivate Aquaculture trace elements, and I do ICP testing, regular ICP testing with Fauna Marin. That's another thing that is new for me in terms of stuff that I do on a regular basis. I had been doing ICP testing maybe twice a year, when it became something that you could do as a reef keeper. I'm dating myself, I've been, like I said, doing this for a long time, 30 years. So I was just doing an occasional ICP test, but I wasn't doing any trace element dosing. So now I'm doing both, and I think it's a great tool to have in terms of trace element dosing, doing regular ICP testing to make sure certain traces are in line. I'm not dosing a whole suite of trace elements, and I talk about that in another video. I can link in the video description below. That I'm not dosing a lot. I'm concentrating on the dynamic trace elements So it's not, I don't have a, you know, probably like 5 or 6 or 7 trace elements that I mix together in a trace element cocktail. So it's pretty simple in that sense. I'm just dosing one trace element cocktail with several traces in it. But I do like the regular ICP testing because it does not only gives me a good picture into what's going on with the different trace elements and what is deficient, what I'm dosing too much of. You know, I also look at it as a baseline for my phosphate levels, nitrates, alkalinity, salinity. It's a good thing to really have, and the Fauna Marin ICP test is also pretty cool because there's a forecasting tool, so you could see if potentially you're prone to be getting dinos, cyano. I've had some cyano issues, so it's been very helpful to look at certain ratios or certain specific trace elements in that regard to see if I'm, you know, potentially at risk for some of those things, or if I do have some of those things, how I potentially could solve those problems by adjusting certain trace elements. So that's it for this video. If you liked it, please give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button if you haven't done so already. Until next time, be safe and be well. Later.